Well, kia ora everybody. Haere mai to the Ecovillage presentation for the evening. The purpose of the event is to build the capacity, move my screen out the way, build the capacity within our society and organizations to create regenerative housing solutions, to connect people together to create synergies and open doors, to showcase inspiring examples of what's possible, to demonstrate how these places are successful at making positive social, ecological, and economic impact, and to build a new narrative for housing. So I hope you find that inspiring. The next thing is, okay, so I'm going to read out the bios of our two presenters. We have Ralph Wallace. Having been brought up on a farm, Ralph developed the practical skills and aptitude to understand and implement initiatives. In 1996, he founded the Te Rā Waldorf School and worked there as a school administrator, property manager, and financial administrator for 20 years. In 2017, he began work on an urban development with one of his brothers to create a co-housing eco-village in Paraparaumu. He draws on the experience of creating an urban community at the Lotus Yoga Center and being an active participant in a spiritual community with the Triangle Center. He has a long association with the Findhorn community in Scotland and visited there in 2005, not long after their eco-village began taking shape in the new settlement adjacent to the park. He has founded Lotus Ecovillage, a project that evolved out of the Lotus Yoga Center, which relocated from Wellington. And he's the father of 2 daughters, 3 stepchildren, and grandfather to 5 grandchildren and another step-grandchild. So very busy guy. And now we have Robina, also a very busy lady. Throughout her life, Robina has worked to bring about significant changes in the lives of people, their communities, and their environment. She is co-founder, resident, and trustee of the Tui Land Trust and of the 33-year-old Tui Community, and is also founder trustee of the Institute for Earth Care Education Aotearoa. Globally, for the past 25 years, she's been engaged in permaculture education and community development of various forms. She has produced a range of environmental education resources and participatory processes for decision-making and collective action. Robina's community facilitation work encompasses a wide range of interventions, including the training of community leaders as cultural change agents, mentoring of new eco-villages, and social renewal of existing ones, participatory permaculture design of eco-village infrastructure, and strengthening the community culture within existing organizations. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, she has facilitated specific development stages of 9 different intentional communities and eco-villages, and internationally, she's worked with eco-villages and community organizations in 10 countries. Wow, Robina, that is amazing. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining today. I thought I'd also share about myself. I'm sort of presenting as well today. So my passion for housing began when I was a teenager. I volunteered with Habitat for Humanity in the United States. In the mid-90s, I attended an alternative housing conference and I learned about sustainable building technologies like straw bale and cob, and I fell in love with natural building. And I decided I'd one day build my own home with my own hands. At the turn of the century, while studying my master's degree in social change and community development, I learned of the community land trust model for affordable housing, and I also learned about intentional communities and eco-villages as a tool for societal transformation and environmental sustainability. After visiting Sirius Ecovillage in the US, I decided I wanted to live in an eco-village too. In early 2000, I worked with Habitat for Humanity in South Africa for 4 years, building houses with future homeowners and volunteers. And in 2006, when a new intentional community was being formed in rural Zululand in South Africa, my husband and I moved out with our 2 young children to this land, and we built our home ourselves with natural materials and recycled materials. So both of my dreams came true in that 1 year. And then I soon turned my place into then what I called the Rainbow Sustainability Commons, which you actually can still find on Facebook, even though I'm not there anymore. It is an off-grid living and learning center, teaching and living the permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share. And over the years, I hosted hundreds of people to learn about social and ecological community living in a micro setting. Unfortunately, the tenure model of the community was insecure as the land was privately owned. And so after 9 years, the community dissolved. And luckily, I was able to get into New Zealand. So I'm able to start again. I came here obviously with my family. And unfortunately, my first housing experience here in New Zealand was cold, damp, and expensive. So I guess in a way it was good because it made me realize that there's work for me to do, and that a lot of changes needed to happen, and that there was an opportunity to bring about better housing. So in November 2018, I coordinated the Connected Living and Affordable Housing event in Hamilton, championing the first community land trust for affordable housing in Hamilton, and that was established earlier this year. So it's the first one in New Zealand that is a partnership with the local council. And now I'm active in facilitating alternative housing solutions using the regenerative approach, which we'll talk a little bit about. I established Common Ground in 2019, and I'm a member also of our Regional Housing Initiative in Waikato. I'm a member of the Society for Alternative Housing Development, which is a national organization, and also the Society for Cooperative Housing, and a member of the Regenerative Practitioners Network. So all of those things are part of the work that I do, part of the connections. So moving on to introducing to Common Ground. So I'll just share a little bit about that organization before we go into Ecovillages. Okay, so Common Ground is, I set it up, I'm using that term regenerative, which we'll explore just now, for social, ecological, and economic well-being. And the purpose of Common Ground is to catalyze affordable, intentional, and sustainable community-led housing communities. So yeah, it's helping with that transition. Hopefully, can everyone see the slides? So we have conventional residential development, which is the business as usual, and I would like us to shift into a regenerative residential development. That picture is of Earth Song here in Aotearoa. So part of what I'm doing is helping with that transition. So what is regenerative development? It's a broad term. It can be applied to different things. So it is about seizing the potential born of crisis for transforming our role as designers, planners, builders, and citizens. It enables the places where we live and work to thrive. It works on potential in a way that creates greater vitality, designs a built environment and human systems that can co-evolve with natural systems. It works to create fields of caring and commitment among stakeholders. And it enables people to understand themselves and the places where they live as complex, evolving living systems, and then builds the political will and the systemic thinking capabilities required to design and create new ways of living in harmony with those living systems. So this is the living systems. It consists of land, which is the natural capital, community, which is social and cultural capital, residents, which is human capital, the local economy, which is financial capital, and infrastructure and housing, which is built capital. So it's just like in the diagram, they really are all interconnected, and they can't one be done without really considering the other, which is that integrated systems approach. And then the other thing about Common Ground is that we look to also build the connections between those who are seeking and who want to live in this way, who are pioneering in placemaking, so with developers and people who are initiating pioneering, and then with enablers, that would be like with government, planners, policy, finance, all the other stakeholders that help to make housing possible. Why do we need eco-villages? Why should anyone care? And that's really the important thing to know here, why everybody needs to care about the way we do our housing, because eco-villages alleviate climate change, they reduce social conflict, they heal environmental damage, and they address other critical challenges of our time. Eco-villages use an integrated systems approach to community development. These places are characterized by striving to take a systemic approach to integrating the human environment with the natural environment. Thus, ecovillages aim to develop green buildings, grow organic food, use renewable energy, create a strong sense of community, use participatory governance systems, and teach what they are learning through practical hands-on methods. That's a quote from a woman at, it's actually called Ecovillage Ithaca. And then I took a quote from Hilda Jackson. So she worked with the Global Ecovillage Network and also with Gaia Education, and from a book that was written for her. It says, groups will create settlements that are sustainable, spiritually, ecologically, economically, and socially. A new economic system, new laws, and new technologies will be invented to support this endeavor. The role of planners, architects, as well as government and regenerative practitioners will be to facilitate the vision and needs of such groups. Architecture, renewable energy supply, gardening, local food production, businesses, common facilities, social structure, local economy will be one integrated totality planned together as ecovillages. And the Ecovillage lifestyle is also a peace initiative. So the principles that guide and what categorizes an ecovillage, what makes it different from, let's say, just a otherwise eco-residential development. So they share these three core principles. They are rooted in local participatory process or community-led process. They're integrating of social, cultural, economic, and ecological dimensions, again, the whole systems approach. And they're actively restoring and regenerating their social and natural environments. And then to be clear, what an ecovillage is not. It is not a particular outcome, but is an ongoing process. So it's a living and learning center of continuous exploration. It is not designed solely by outside developers, architects, or experts, but by communities themselves. It is not focused solely on ecology, although many start with that dimension. Preservation and restoration of nature can only succeed when the social fabric is strong, cultural heritage is celebrated, and people find many ways to marry their love for the planet with their need to make a living. And it is not islands for the rich and middle class. I wanted to share a bit about the Global Ecovillage Network because it's quite an amazing network.
First of all, Global Ecovillage Network was founded let's see, back in the mid-80s, out of a need to bring both traditional ecovillages and contemporary intentional communities that wanted to upscale and also have a much more holistic approach together. And there was work done by Robert and Diane Gilman of just kind of coalescing what they could find of eco-villages around the world, and village is about a village scale and ecological. So this is the contemporary Global Ecovillage Network, where they're not just looking at residential communities situated on land, but it spans from the whole thing of eco-citizens, how one is living one's life in a sustainable way, right through to eco-civilizations and eco-cities. For example, Waitakere was calling itself an eco-city because before it became part of Greater Auckland, and under that umbrella, you'll come across Earthsong Eco-Neighbourhood in this presentation. Under the umbrella is why Earthsong chose Waitakere and co-worked with them on very similar sustainability principles. This is the Global Ecovillage map of around the world, different hubs of ecovillages and national or continental organisations. And we in New Zealand are part of GENOA, which is Global Ecovillage Network of Oceania and Asia. Here is a little diagram which goes into some of the span of it. It's not just simply residential, but it's even how schools can be places of transformation for with the same principles of sustainability that underpin ecovillages. And then you could see their urban ecovillages, and that's a strength in New Zealand we'll talk further about, which is the theme of co-housing. And the last thing I've got here is that this is research work done by questionnaires to the thousands of ecovillages on Jen's network. And the outcome of this, these are the results that they have in terms of their contribution towards climate change and their contribution towards a more regenerative environment. And it's pretty impressive, the total scores of what you see there. So it's not just about sustainable human community and a congenial place to live with economic and social benefits, it's also hugely environmental in its reach. So that's all I'll say there, and leave it over to you then, Zola. I'll take it off screen sharing.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to share. You read my mind. Perfect. That's all I want to share about Jen for right now, but I would like to encourage folks to visit the Global Ecovillage website. It is so extensive. You could just spend days exploring. They've got so many resources, and there's constantly trainings and opportunities offered to learn and participate, and they've got so many different things going on. Really a fantastic site. So yeah, their annual report was 64 Pucker block pages of things that they have been doing just in 1 year. The projects that they support, the impact they make, it's really impressive. So, and then we wanted, Robina and I would really like to build that network stronger, that Genoa here in New Zealand. We're trying to build that capacity, so we've got the ability to offer more training and other resources through that Ecovillage network. So that's another possibility for us, another presentation. Okay, so Ithaca, well, it's actually called Ecovillage Ithaca. It's located in the Finger Lakes region of Ithaca, New York. Can everyone see this? It was established in '91, and they purchased their land in '92. The area is 70 hectares. 4 of those are forest. 8.5 is made up of organic farms that provide food for 1,500 people. They have 8,000 meters squared of community gardens and 3 ponds. And then housing, they've got 3 co-housing neighborhoods, each have a common house. They have 100 homes total, made up of duplex, single family, and apartments. And the footprint of the homes is 3.6 hectare. So I'll go into the other parts of what they're using the land for. So it is a learning center, as you saw on the slide that Robina showed. 100% of the ecovillages are teaching and are learning spaces. So that's really a key component. So Ecovillage Ithaca actually started that way. They were established by Learn at Ecovillage, a grassroots organization, and also the Center for Transformative Action, which is affiliated with Cornell University. They work with students and researchers using the living laboratory of the village and the small farms. They educate 600 visitors annually through tours and immersion experiences. They train architects, builders, and engineers in net zero buildings, and they provide mentoring services for forming communities. So land use is quite awesome here. They, well, in order to figure out how they were actually going to use the land and how they were going to start the community to begin with, they began a 5-day envisioning retreat made up of 100 people to adopt the basic concepts for the eco-village, and they talked about land use. The land was purchased from a developer whose intention was to make 90% of the site with a housing footprint for only 150 homes. So that would have been paving and, you know, each house having their own, you know, large area. But Ecovillage Ithaca, they built 100 homes, and their entire built environment footprint takes up only 10% of the site, which means that there's so much left to be thriving, abundant land use. The committee created a set of guidelines for development and the site planning process, and they have 3 working farms. The first one, it's organic, runs as a community-supported agriculture with 250 shareholders. The second farm, also a CSA, is a U-pick berry farm, and the third is a teaching farm for immigrants to help them to set up their own farms. So just imagine if that had been rather that other developer who had gotten hold of that land. There'd be nothing but people just living there. And the land, which is fantastic for agriculture, would have been lost under paving. So this is really, I think, key to us, particularly in Aotearoa, because we are really concerned about agricultural land being turned into housing. But if we're looking at the way Ithaca Ecovillage does housing and land, it actually becomes more productive when you match people with agricultural land and you do the housing in an appropriate way. Okay, and then living sustainably, all homes follow guidelines for green building, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. The residents use 2/3 fewer resources for food, transport, energy, and housing than the typical American. The co-housing model enables strong social ties. 45% of residents work on site, either in the village or in their home offices. Waste services are cut 75% due to on-site composting and recycling. Affordability is attained through reduced living expenses, and they've achieved numerous awards and coverage. So again, just going back to city planning, if you're considering what a normal development would need in terms of services from the council and their impact on council services, if you're looking at an eco-village, it's reduced in some cases 75%, in which case then it saves the council tons of money, saves the community lots of money. So that's really important. And okay, that's it for that part of the presentation for Ithaca. Now, Robina was going to share about Findhorn and I think Narara so Findhorn's in Scotland and Narara is in Australia. We just need you to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I've been in Findhorn Foundation and Findhorn Community about 4 times, and twice of them has been at Ecovillage conferences, and very impressed by the structure of Findhorn, and it's evolved through time from Eileen Caddy and Peter Caddy and Dorothy McLean establishing themselves on sort of very harsh conditions on sand dunes in this windswept part of Scotland near to a caravan park, to some of the images you see today. And the scale of Findhorn, I worked with my colleague Robert Gilman on the transformation of the structure of Findhorn, of the actual governance structure of Findhorn, and then we were working with that 450 residents, of which not all of them live actually in the community itself. They live in the wider area of Findhorn Village, about 100 of them. So Findhorn has this core, which you could say it's a charitable trust. It's under the Scottish law, and that is, people don't own the land. They basically work in exchange for a space to be in, a space to rent. And then there's what's called the Field of Dreams, which is then a part right next to Findhorn. You can probably see it in that top. I'll just see here, not labeled. And that means people own, it's a unit title structure. People own their own little piece of land and their house. And then there's a collective land that's shared ownership. So people come there because it's a community education place, it's a place of spiritual sustenance, and it's also got a lot of alternative technology that governs it. They have their own electricity generation, something called the, what's it called? It's a blackwater, grey water purification system, a natural one called the Living Machine, and that takes care of all that. And they have so much different infrastructure and so many different programs. And then I think I have one, no, that's it. So that little building with the turf roof and the stones is called the Nature Sanctuary. You can see a lot of the layout of the buildings there in one of the slides on the right. And typically, as in every single eco-village or every single natural system, whether it's a tribal structure or whether it's a co-housing cluster, it ends up being about 8 to 10 households. It seems like that's the pattern that makes sustainable human relationships and functionality work. So, yep, I'll move on perhaps to the next eco-village in Australia, shall I, Zola?
Sure, yep.
All right, so this is Narara Ecovillage. And as you can see there on the map where it's situated, the attractive thing for people investing in it and choosing to live there and build their houses is that it's on a really good train route, so access to transport is important in where you place your community eco-village, and it's about, driving wise, about an hour and 15 minutes from Sydney, but it's just like nothing at all like the metropolis of Sydney. And so currently now there's around 200 members. I've been part of the development of it. I think I've run 3 different workshops there. One has been to do with their community gardens. The other one has been to do with the different nodes and spaces and the uses of those that are in between the buildings and in between the gardens. And another one has been a social theme. So there's a lot to learn from Narara. It's again like Ursong, a unit title model, or they call it strata title in Australia. And I think for these times, it's the best kind of economic structure that we have available legally. This is the layout they have within it. As you enter the gates, you're entering the area where there's several co-housings and smaller units, and then people have their own property where they can build their own house on, and there seems to be quite a movement of, how could you say, demonstratable or model houses, you know, houses with unusual and maybe unique features, which are super eco, that architects are really interested in looking at this whole village. If you look down below, there's a photograph, and that's overlooking the forest and the dam. So they've got, like Ithaca, a significant part of the land is still in forest, it's in a dam, it's for wildlife. And the last one is just, you know, a few of the designs that you'll see on the drawing board. It's very strongly collectively run and managed and developed with a lot of small groups of specific interest and expertise, and very much people who are in professional fields living there so that they can do a really good and thorough job at a level that's acceptable to their local council. Yeah, I'll just say one last thing about the economics. At the very beginning, people invested, even people who knew they wouldn't be living there, they invested in that eco-village instead of, you know, people who had those ethics and that vision for our future, instead of the bank. And they got a similar return, but a more of a lag time of that happening, not immediately, than what they would get in the bank. They might even have nominated a lower rate. But that's how they got their land purchased. And yeah, that's probably all I need to say about that with the time we have. But they would definitely welcome visitors. And yeah, there's a whole range from new babies right through to elderly there. And they have such a sense of, we are doing this together. Yep, that's it from me for Narara.
Oh, that's great, Robina. So I think we'll stick with you because you were going to introduce also the New Zealand ones, the Aotearoa Ecovillages, because we do have many listed on the Gen site, and we have Earth Song, we have your community, and then we'll have Ralph share about the Lotus Ecovillage.
All right, so what I'll do then is I'll stop sharing. I can't find my cursor. Maybe instead of doing that, yep, actually I'll stop sharing and then come back. So from what you are talking about, the New Zealand, Zola, maybe it's a moment for you to introduce more like an overview of ecovillages or co-housing in New Zealand, and then I'll start with these examples. Yeah, because
okay.
That's Common Ground has been investigating or researching. So just a couple of sentences, filling in time while I just get my screen share.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I don't have any slides, but what I can say is that within the alternative housing movement, oh, you've got it. Should I just have you carry on then, or should I carry on?
Just finish your sentence.
Okay, so yeah, basically we've got, at the moment in Aotearoa, we've got market housing, and we have what's called social housing, or it's even called community housing. And so what Common Ground is doing, as well as I'll talk about other organizations that are doing it as well, is we're looking at that middle piece, that is that community-led, which has affordability built into it, and Common Ground's addition to that movement is that ecological piece, because there actually are movements to get the financial, more affordable, and to get more, social cohesion styles of housing like co-housing. But what I'm finding still is missing is that understanding, and it's because of my permaculture background that I want to see that more holistic with, with the environment and nature. And Earth Song is actually that. It's that's a perfect lead-in, Robina, to the fact that they've actually got they've actually got those two, the ecological and the social. The affordable piece isn't quite there, but.
So what I'll do is just say a tiny history, and then go into more of the structure of it, including the physical infrastructure. So Robin Ellison, an architect, was the initiator of Earth Song, and she gathered together a group of people who clearly wanted to live in a urban-suburban situation. They wanted to leave home, go to work in their jobs, come back into a place of sanity and social cohesion and happiness. Well, that was kind of their idea, and also with nature around, not just in the metropolis. And so, as I said, they were selecting the area of Waitakere because it's declared itself an eco-city. However, Waitakere had not really many examples, and even though they had the policy, they didn't have the demonstration to back it up. And so this was a perfect partnership. So the whole way through, Earth Song's consultants, I want to know if you can hear background noise at this point. Nope. Okay. So Earth Song's professionals teamed up with the council's professionals, like, a planner from Earth Song would team up with a planner from the council and so on. And they basically learned from each other. And the council was very generous in their support. And even the Common House, which is also functions as the area's Ranui in Auckland, and there's Swanson on the railway line there, and Henderson there, around that area. And so with that, they financed, as well as with the Auckland Savings Bank at that time, gift and interest-free loans to build the Common House, so it also could be used by the wider community. Anyhow, the layout is a permaculture design. It's on 5 acres of an ex-apple and pear orchard organic, and they started out with building the community house, and a lot of the multiplexes, you can see they are shared wall houses, soundproofed, and you'll see in this slide there much clearer photographs. They're all two-story. So they're built with rammed earth at the base and wooden at the top, and all with solar hot water heaters. And you either will own, the top and bottom, or you'll own the top, something like that. So then as well, the key thing, you can't see any roads in these pictures. You just see walking pathways for bicycles or pushchairs, prams, and also carts that people push with their stuff to their houses. And the key of any co-housing, or they call this an eco-neighbourhood, actually, it's quite a lovely word. It's a co-housing, however, is having the car park right at the entrance where everyone parks their car and cars don't go through it. And that means that every time you walk along, it's likely, they call it bump spaces in social ecology, it's likely you'll bump into someone, meet somebody. And the other key thing about the design of the houses and the whole neighbourhood village is that at the front of the house, that's the place, it's a social area. And if you want to be meeting people or even inviting people for cups of tea on your table, it'll be out the front. And at the back of the house is a private space. So you choose where you want to be according to what your needs are at that time for private or social. Just moving on to one more slide. So there's a kind of 3D type diagram of it. Again, because it's a permaculture place, everything is multi-purposed. So you can see the pond there. It's a large pond for stormwater runoff, but it's also recreation for ducks, for also firefighting water for watering the orchard, so multi-purpose. And the swales that are runoffs from the slightly cambered walkways also have food plants in them. So it's an abundance of food and wildlife and nature around places. The last thing I want to mention about Earthsong is what they call walk to work. I think here, I'm going to go back to that slide here, and you'll see in the front there of the slide, it's kind of a faded area with just kind of very light pastel-y tree circles on it, nothing much in there. Well, that's actually the walk to work area. That was development stage 3, and it started being developed now. And this is another feature of an eco-village, in that you ideally want to have the employment, the livelihood happening within the eco-village or very close to it, so that you don't have to get in your vehicle and drive anywhere. So this ecological footprint thing. So there you can have a suite of offices, and that means that you have a common internet system, for example. You can have light industry, production, cottage crafts, different kind of buildings in those walk to work. And any of these large 300 people to 500 people eco-villages that I know of, we don't have any of that scale in New Zealand, but there are plenty in Australia and plenty in other parts of the world. They all have some kind of economic hub that enables people to have employment on the place there. So I think that probably is enough about Earthsong.
Yeah, that's quite great. That's great coverage. And the nice thing is people can actually visit it if they're in the North Island or in the Hamilton, Auckland area. They have visits.
Yeah, they have. I just want to show you the context. If you look at that slide, which has got the bigger expanse with that kind of teardrop shape in the center, which is basically, their central picnic area and stuff. Look beyond that to the back of those blue buildings. There's a school and a church, and then there's shops, and they're plonked right in the middle of Ranui, which is a multicultural suburb. And what you said about people visiting, they have regularly. What would they call it? Like tours. Yeah, organised tours, so you can make contact. And just to say, Robin Ellison has just put out her book about the history of Earth Song and the building of co-housing. So that's something to look out for. You can just look, Robin is her first name, Allison, Allison. You can just look online and it'll pop up, I'm sure.
Thanks, Robina. We're running about 5 or 6 minutes behind, just FYI.
Right. Thank you. All right, good. I went to town on Earth Song, didn't I? So this is where I live, in Tui Community and Golden Bay, and I'll be briefer here. You can see the context, that little map on the ground there that my friend Anne is looking at. That is a map of the Golden Bay bioregion, and we're next to Aotearoa National Park. So that's, you'll see the land there in the aerial photograph. Just go for the slides and talking from the slides. So Tui has a educational cultural centre, actually a whole outdoor events field, and this outdoor events field operates right through from early spring to late autumn, not just for our own events, but people hire that field as well. So that's part of our charitable trust's purpose, is providing that educational space, and we run a lot of our own workshops. So I run permaculture design courses out of there. There is rites of passage events for young men and young women. There's family events for kids, etc., etc. And it's a really, really special place. We also have Tui Bums Cooperative, and taking a peek inside Tui Bums there, which some of you may have seen these products on the shelves of chemists and health food shops and our bug balm and the dock outlets. So virtually through time, anybody who wants to work at Tui Bums can, and it employs half of our community. It's super successful, and it's a great place to work and a really good vibe. So yeah, it's so good to have a community business. And the key thing to this one is that it's called a charitable cooperative. So all the profits above expenses and paying people wages go into organisations that are non-profit, that are doing good work in New Zealand, half of which are in our local community of Golden Bay, and people love that. We've worked with consensus decision making for now. Tui is 35 years old. We've never had to go to majority rule, and we're just starting to work with a form of sociocracy and moving to consent, which is quite similar, but it's a much more it's a swifter process. So you can just see some of the workshops happening. We also use the coloured card system for voting, which many of the co-housing, it comes under. If you're interested in governance, have a look at the co-housing website of USA. This is where Earth Song learned about colour card system for voting and decision making and discussion, and we learned it from them. We have this energy input system, 3.5 hours a week. Everybody's in some sort of a team or some sort of a individual responsibility to take care of the whole, particularly just on a maintenance level. So it's the gardens, the orchards, the land, the animals, and then we have things like visitor coordinator and community house coordinator and so on and so forth. Everybody's got a role there. So that's our volunteer contribution to make the whole place tick. And because of the times we're living in, there is a lack of affordability of houses in our area, and a lack of houses generally in this country, a housing crisis. So we are creating our own, on one area of land, kind of our own mini tiny house area that people can come and just rent a space and have a community within a community. So this is it in process. And I think that's all. I'll finish there with Tui, but please look on our website, www.tuitrust.org, and find out a bit more about it, and come and visit and come and do work exchange if you're interested. That's me there, and I'll finish the sharing. Yep.
Great, thank you, Robina. I had the great fortune to do work exchange with Robina over this last summer, and I absolutely enjoyed myself thoroughly being in that community. It was everything that I imagined the community experience to be like and more. And I really do would suggest, if you have a chance, to either do the work exchange or some other way to be experiencing that community. So thank you, Robina, for hosting me so I could experience that. It was magical.
Looking forward to Ralph now.
Yes. So Ralph, we are going to give you the podium to share about Lotus Ecovillage. So you can go ahead and screen share when you're ready, or if you want to introduce or talk without your screens for a little bit, you're welcome.
Sure. Thanks very much, Lola, and thank you so much for putting on this slideshow, well, the Zoom meeting. It's fantastic work that you're doing and bringing people together. So, you know, bouquet to you for that. And thank you too, Robin, for all your sharings, Robina. I'm just reflecting back on your presentation about Findhorn. I was reading today. So just a big shout out to Findhorn. It's been a big inspiration to me over the last 40 odd years. It started in the early 60s and I became aware of it in the early 70s. So it's a fascinating place. It's founded on spiritual values, and those are the things that attracted me, and incredible stories of manifestation. And there's our logo and title, and if I scroll down, there's a kind of a pictorial picture of the Ecovillage superimposed over the current housing that's there. We can see, I don't know if anybody can see my mouse, but in the top sort of right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 houses that are sort of built over the top of the original Lotus Yoga Centre villa.
Can see your mouse, can.
You can see my mouse?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's the original house. There's another cottage over here, which is currently there. This is a pond, and we've talked about that in Robina's presentation of Earth Song and what the uses that the pond provides. Here we have the new community centre, and scattered through this area and along this ribbon road, we have the houses that are currently being built. So we've got about a dozen houses in the process of being built. There's 4 have been occupied, and I guess we're in the process of formation. So there's we started just with the idea, and immediately we had half a dozen people, families, committing to the whole concept in the Ecovillage. And it's evolved out of a 50-year journey of the Lotus Yoga Centre. It's not the yoga centre community, it's an Ecovillage community founded on the principles of co-housing, which basically means sharing resources, looking out for each other, not looking after each other. And right in the centre, really close to the community centre, is a sanctuary, and we'll come to a slide of that in a minute. So that's just a picture on the edge of Parapararumu. It's zoned urban, but we're rural all around us. So here's a slide showing our vision is to establish a co-housing neighbourhood based on the principles of sharing, caring, and living in harmony with the planet. A community that will serve as a model of social, environmental, and financial sustainability. To design and construct a cohesive neighbourhood whose layout, buildings, and services demonstrate the highest practical standards of sustainable human settlement. To develop and foster a living environment which uses clear communication, decision-making, and conflict resolution guidelines that promote tolerance, safety, respect, and cooperation. To assist in education and public awareness of sustainability by demonstrating and promoting innovative community design and environmentally responsible construction, promoting reuse, recycle, and repair. To create a new, can't quite see that, but to perhaps other you can read it, to create a new future for young families by establishing a true intergenerational community. And then I've lost the words, but hopefully other people can see it. If we move on to the next one, one of the early things that we did as a group was to create guidelines and principles by which we would all live together by. We could summarize it. We didn't think of it at the time, but if we were to summarize it, it would be to do unto others as you would have others do unto you. That sounds like it might be too easy or maybe even too hard, depending on how we approach it. But there are 17 clauses to our guidelines and principles, which can be viewed in the information booklet on our website, which is, I think Zola will share with everybody. It's Lotus Yoga. If you just Google Lotus Ecovillage, then you will find it relatively easily. So we workshopped that document over 2 or 3 meetings. The first principle is to have fun and find enjoyment for life in the company of our co-inhabitants. The second deals with the relationship between the community and the Lotus Yoga Centre, which is a vital relationship, a key relationship. The Yoga Centre is kind of like a parent of the Ecovillage, and the Ecovillage has now grown to be vaster, but will be, in a sense, a bigger so kind of dynamic and entity than the Yoga Centre itself. So that's been a challenge, I think. But we're moving through that. The following 15 principles can be summarised in one word: respect. Respect for each other, the wider community, and the environment, dealing with connection and positive resolution of relationship. So we're eco. There are many ways that we're eco, and I've just summarised the main points, or the main characteristics, which is sun orientation for passive solar gain and natural light, low E glass in the buildings, a high R rating for insulation, minimum environmental impact and protection of the regenerating native bush. You can see from earlier slide that we actually, the whole area is largely native bush, and we surgically implant the houses into that bush, protecting as much of it as possible. So yeah, purposeful design for enhanced healthy living and positive social outcomes. We're currently working on a new concept, or it's been part of our thinking, but we've just begun to work on the realization, having got as far as we have with, a dozen houses out of 24 being built. We want to actually create a townhouse of eight houses, dropping 4 of the original houses from our design, and provide hopefully 8 families with their own high-spec eco home by financially assisting them into the property. The Ecovillage Body Corp, we have unit title as a method of ownership, as other places have, would have a second mortgage over the freehold property. And then we would expect the family to repay the Ecovillage loan over a 10-year period by savings or topping up the bank loan each year against the increased value of the home. There's a slideshow of the houses. So they would be towards the front of the property, and we're quite excited about that. And hopefully we'll get planning through council. And there's a photo of our community centre. We have on the first floor, we have yoga therapy, we have Thai massage therapy, we have yoga centre reception and writing room and a reading room. Upstairs on the top floor, we have the community centre. I'll show you a photo of that in a sec. And the yoga studio. That's our sanctuary, which is really the heart of the community. It's what anchors us to this place. And in the background, you can see the example of one of the houses. That's the yoga centre studio and our community centre. And just reversing the angle, there's our kitchen and scullery. Just thinking of what challenges that we've had, I think people might be interested to know that really getting the whole resource consent through the RMA and through council planning officers and so on, that's been a significant challenge where, by definition, I guess eco-villages don't fit into a nice tidy box, sort of urban planning box. So yeah, that's been challenging. Things like we've got a bridge over a little stream, a very small stream, but the bridge is designed to be 5 meters wide. It takes the traffic to the houses, 5 houses on the other side. Because it's 5 meters wide, the bridge, it has to meet a standard that can withstand the impact of a car traveling at 80 kilometers an hour. Now, the fact that you get over the bridge and immediately turn left or right, no one's going to be driving at 80 kilometers, but that's a classic example of how the narrow thinking of councils can constrict or cost us $80,000.
So we're finishing up with the presentation. So it is quite an expanding, as they say, ecosystem of community-led housing, alternative housing, the role players. It's starting to pick up as a movement. 2 big role players within that is the Society for Alternative Housing Development. I've taken this from the site. We are building a network of organizations who have the tools and skills to help people progress their own projects. We are a voice for change in the industry, and we are actively breaking down the barriers facing alternative development models in New Zealand. So we've recently put together a policy statement, which we can make, it actually I think is available on the website. We need members as well as committee members. We're looking for diversity. So it is a very new but growing organization. We've got a bank account for fundraising, etc. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in advancing this movement, to join us, even as just a member. The other organization I'm also a part of is the Society for Cooperative Housing. This is an exciting time because the committee, we've been working towards establishing a community who can co-construct pathways to creating environmentally positive, cooperatively owned, run, and utilized housing for New Zealanders. So this is looking specifically at the cooperative ownership model for housing. And we enable the development of the legal, finance, and governance structures, documents and processes, environmental standards and requirements required to deliver 21st century home and living solutions. So we've got a grant that is to develop a toolkit for other groups who want to use this cooperative housing model to be able to make it really easy to do that anywhere in the country. So that's exciting. I don't know how that turned. Okay, and then in terms of common ground, it's sort of me with a network of others. We are mostly serving housing providers, developers, and pioneers with consulting, project design, project resourcing, and training. And we're serving the public also, like tonight, through educational events, through weaving networks, through advocacy, like my role on the cooperative, on the alternative housing, and then as a resource hub. So the website is hopefully going to be more developed to be able to be a resource for anything alternative housing. And so if you're interested in working in any way with Common Ground, you can subscribe to the newsletter to get weekly-ish inspiration and information. You can invite us to present to your team or organization, similarly like we've done tonight. We can offer courses in integrated systems approach to housing in those variety of systems. We can work with you on project design and resourcing for your housing projects using a living system framework. Like I have interviewed a few others, you could be interviewed, have your project put on the YouTube channel, and like again what we've done with Robina and Ralph, you can be having your project be presented out to others, and you can collaborate with the Common Ground team in other ways to further the mission.
Ralph, I'm really interested to know from you if you had any issues around density with the council, because I was looking at the site and how many dwellings you're looking at putting on it versus what the neighbourhood next door looked like. So can you comment on density and
Sure.
How that went with council?
Yep, so it wasn't an issue with council. We've got 8.5 acres and we could have had 60 houses built on that because it's zoned urban. We could have chopped the land up into little pieces, cleared all the trees and regenerating native bush off the land, and crammed on 60 houses. We were only putting on 29 houses. So there's lots of space between houses. Well, there's eight or 9 meters, because we've consolidated the houses to a degree, but we had no problem with planning on that side of things with the council.
Can I just make an observation, and perhaps you'd like to comment? Here in Tauranga, we're looking at some changes to density, and particularly within the CBD area and some of the suburbs close to the CBD. So the density is going to increase. And my experience, in the past, I've been a licensed cadastral surveyor, so I've worked a lot with councils and whatnot. And councils have always been a bit nervous about agreeing to any density that fell sort of too far below what they were looking at, because they're actually wanting to bring people closer together. And I was also looking at the contours of the site that you're on and all the bush, and I wonder if actually, practically speaking, the site that you occupy couldn't really contain the full density of that urban zoning anyway.
No, that is true, but we have a large area of flat land, and we're dedicating most of that to a village green and gardens, orchards and things like that. So we could have built a lot more houses in that area. But yeah, the site has dictated, I suppose, if that we could use that word, or we've worked with the site as harmoniously as possible to create what would be a financially sustainable development. We needed because of all the various parameters, we needed to build a certain number of houses just to have a break even. It's a non-profit project. It's been underwritten by my brother, who's project managing the development, and so does that help? Does that answer your question to some degree?
Yeah, it's just interesting to get a feel for how other councils are looking at density when the councils that I'm closest to are completely revisiting that.
There was another factor, which is I imagine it's probably nationwide, but Kapiti Coast District Council, it's consults with local iwi, and iwi have input to the resource consent, RMA process, and it was through consulting with them that we redesigned to a degree. And we found that their input was quite helpful. So the iwi have their own environmental officer, and the council has its environmental officers, and regional council. So yeah, we have to make them all happy.
I understand that.
There was a question, Ralph, from Pip, who says, how long did it take to get consent to go forward?
Right, so we applied for resource consent at the end of 2017. The whole we really started to work on the Ecovillage in sort of March 2017, and then it was a case of finding an urban planner. We acquired one, the only one really that was available, and they didn't impress us. They lacked the imagination, I think, and tended to be too urban focused rather than we were trying to create something quite different. So by the end of that year, we had submitted our application for resource consent, having spent $10,000 each on 7 or 8 different reports: environmental, ecological, sound, traffic, a whole host of different, you probably know, Deb, what's required there. And then it took till September the following year for us to get through that consenting process. And we then, as soon as we got consent, we started with mapping out or creating what would become roads by having, we had to take out 50 or 60 pine trees out of that site, and so and to protect the regenerating native bush. So that was a big challenge at that stage. Yeah, that took another sort of 4 or 5 months, and there's been steps and steps along the way ever since. So we finally had our first occupants move in a month ago.
Who else has a question? You can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself to ask. Matt says, when trying to drive this forward with people, I often get asked how those coming in are determined and what happens when people leave and new people want to join, i.e. with land trusts and site ownership, etc. Who chooses the newcomers effectively? So I guess both Robina, because at Tui you might have this coming and going of people, and Ralph, I guess you haven't yet had that.
We have.
Oh, really? Yeah, when you have a set, maybe Robina, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. So we have a process of membership, and there'll be some kind of entry process for every group. And mostly it's not as rigorous as ours. So it goes visitor, or resident, prospective member, and that, at sort of 2-year mark, people become, usually by 2 years they're a prospective member, by 4 years they're a member, which gives them the right to build. It's called the right to occupy under our trust deed structure, the right to build or purchase a house if there's one available. So people take that quite seriously, and because it's a charitable trust, then what people input for the right to occupy financially, it's a gift to the trust. So it's not like you can undo the gift. So if people choose to leave, the gift still stays in there when they're a member. So they think about it really seriously, about the transition from prospective member to member, because that's when the financial component is. I mean, we put also into the development of the trust and into maintaining the place. That's just like a levy, but it's not like your lump sum you put down when you're into membership. Yeah, so in terms of integrating people, new people, it's slow again. It's kind of slow and measured almost. Sometimes we can integrate more people than others. We don't have people coming. We just say no. We're at a consolidation phase. And I'm just reading the question here. What happens with people to leave and new people want to join in? Ownership. Yep. Who chooses the newcomers? We have a consensus decision-making process, and the person needs to get honest and open feedback, and sometimes they need to reach a new bar for themselves. Maybe they're just a bit slack in participating and pitching in with the work. Well, then it's a no, because there's a certain bar that we hold. So yeah, with that, every single person needs to be content, and it's sort of like obvious in a way through that time, because people are they fit in or they don't, or it's about value systems people hold, and it's actually also about pitching in to hold the place in a healthy way.
Yeah, so there was I guess it's just a comment. It says from Carol, I can understand Tui is quite well established, so it makes sense to be careful and protect the authenticity of the village.
And in our case, just quickly, we aren't so well established. We're seeking to get established. And so we're very open to people joining us. But one of the first things that we did was to create our guidelines and principles so that people understood exactly what we stood for, and if they were, could harmonise with that. And they had the money to come in, they need a 10% deposit, and then they need to attend a meeting or a couple of meetings and just meet the people who are already part of the group. And if they feel that they're in harmony with us, then that's worked. But having said that, people have come and gone, and their circumstances changed over the 2 or 3 years that we've been developing our Ecovillage. We haven't had any difficulties. People are free to come and they're free to go. If they're coming, they come in with their eyes wide open. We we are who we are. We present ourselves without anything hidden, and so far, we are growing faster than we can almost keep up with.
We'll maybe just leave it because it could go on, but the question is around exiting, and I think that that's just as important actually as entering. I think about the community that I lived in for many years, and that was really where the sort of poison feelings came in when somebody wanted to exit and they had an expectation of what they should get back, or how they were actually asked to leave and all that kind of stuff. So I think that is important to consider, how that exiting can be made legal and easy, and all those things. People are asking about getting deposits back, but
in our case, people who've made a 10% deposit, they got their money back, no questions asked.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, better that they weren't there and not want to be there than better that they go, and we wish them well and pass back their deposit. At least that's what's happened to date.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good.
And I'll just say too that how we started is how we still do it today. So it's still the selection process. We had to select each other, and just a quick thing for people who are starting out. I totally encourage you to take on a project that's nothing to do with your own personal gain or the group's gain. An altruistic project, restoring a ravaged landscape or putting gardens at old people's home, and apply all of the skills and tools you need in the establishment of a village, managing money, looking after kids, whatever, and rotate those roles. So you get to actually do a real thing together, not just talk about it. And that helps you sort each other out.
So thank you all very much for coming.
And all the best in implementing your dreams, your vision, and moving around those obstacles, and having teamwork and being relentless and just going for it.